Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we explore a range of ideas and inspiration that all culminate in designing the lifestyle that we've always dreamed of. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about how to run mini lifestyle experiments to craft a lifestyle that you love. So one experiment at a time. You may be thinking, Mindy, what? Experiments, lifestyle? I think I've heard of this experiments thing before. What really came to mind for me, especially this week? I've been running a lot of experiments. How many of us dream about a lifestyle that we wish we could have in the here and now, but we really don't have any idea how to get there? And I feel like many of us try to go cold turkey, like the going cold turkey approach, or doing something drastic, but it doesn't always produce those lasting results. Sometimes it does, but think about it. Very few people wake up one day having never run in their entire life with the revelation that they want to become a marathoner. And then they jump right into a seasoned marathon training program and keep it going for a lifetime. How many people do you know who have done something like that? Very, very few. Most of us actually go about creating a lifestyle that we love, something that gets us fired up, days that are incredible, by baby steps and mini experiments that lead to long-term change. And this has been a theme of my life. If you ask anybody who's known me for probably a decade or more, they will say, Mindy is that person. She's always experimenting. She's always doing something different. She's always trying something new. She's obsessed with this topic. And the way that I go about learning is what I call immersive learning and follow that up with experiments. So how I tend to approach things is there's an area in my life that I feel like this could be better. Or sometimes I'm just curious. I'm a very curious person. And I just get obsessed with the topic. And so what I will do is I will read everything I can find. I will usually find a podcaster who also talks about that topic. I will just immerse myself in everything I can find for several months, typically. Sometimes it's only a few weeks, but most of the time it's 4 months at a time. And then what I will do is I will take all of that information and I will process it. I will do some critical thinking. I will try to cross-reference it. If there are contradictory viewpoints, I will actually look and see, okay, so-and-so, this person that I really jived with, I really like their approach. Okay, who's a person on the other side of that thinks differently? So I try to triangulate and go about it in a critical thinking way, but also what sits well with me, like what actually resonates with me. And I'm going to lean towards what resonates with me versus the hard scientific facts most of the time. So basically, it is a process of continuous exploration. Now, this has gotten me in a lot of trouble as a younger person because I did not actually know how to think critically. I would literally take books that I would read. I can ask my parents about this. They will laugh. I would read these books. Like, for example, I read a book about being a raw vegan. And I said, oh, great. Somebody put it in a book. It must be scientific. I'm going to just go do this raw vegan thing. And I completely destroyed my health. I destroyed my teeth. I'm still suffering from things that started from that raw vegan journey. And for those of you who are raw vegan, nothing against you. My hat's off to you. If it's working for you, fantastic. For me, it just did not work. But basically, my point is that we cannot just take a book or a resource or something we read online and just necessarily run with it. We really do need to do more of an immersive learning type approach. But what we can do during that process is really start to think about experiments. And lifestyle is literally experiment upon experiment upon experiment that all kind of culminate in this lifestyle that we say, wow, one day we wake up and we think, from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, it is filled with incredible stuff. Like all of the things that I love are somehow integrated into my day. And when all of those things are integrated into our days, into our weeks, into our months, then we have a lifestyle that we love. But it starts with the baby steps and the mini experiments. So let's talk through some mini experiments today and how do you actually go about creating your own mini experiments? So I'm going to share some stories. I'll get to learn a little bit about some experiments that I've run over time. So first of all, I love health and fitness. If you've listened to my podcast and other episodes, you've probably heard me nerd out on this. I love diets. So for me, diet has always been something I have experimented with. I have tried everything. Like I mentioned, raw vegan, I've done keto, I've done low carb, I've done paleo, I've done autoimmune protocols, I have done Weston A. Price. I was actually a chapter leader for them for a while. I've gone the gamut when it comes to diets, macros, and counting macros and getting into bodybuilding, all of that good stuff. Bad stuff, good stuff, however you want to shape it. But basically, diet has always been something I love to experiment with. I love micronutrients. I like figuring out how nutrient dense can I make my diet and still enjoy it. It's not worth suffering and eating cans of sardines to increase my omega-3s. To me, I really want an approach that works. So diet is a way that I have explored running experiments. So basically what I will do if there's something I want to change in my diet, most of the time it is not a drastic overhaul. Now, if you listened to my podcast last week where I talked about living with long COVID, it was a drastic overhaul. I actually had to take out a lot of foods in my diet to actually follow more of an autoimmune approach, or what people would call autoimmune, and definitely having to take out some foods that were very triggering for me at the time. But in general, when I'm looking at improving my diet or playing with my diet or just wanting to do something different, because sometimes I get tired of eating the same old things, what I will do is I will experiment with usually one meal or one food. So for example, recently I learned about celery juice as a way to start your day. And there is a book all about it. You can Google it, the celery juice, basically drink celery juice when you first wake up in the morning. It's fantastic. So I actually decided to run an experiment. Like, okay, for 1 week, every morning, instead of drinking lemon water with salt, which used to be my morning drink, I am going to switch over to celery juice and just see how I feel. I read the book. I thought it was great. I'm like, okay, I don't think it's really that magical, but it may be worth trying and I might enjoy it. And it's a way to start the day in a healthy way that hydrates me. So I did. So I did it for a week and I felt fantastic. I was like, oh, this is actually quite interesting. It was simple enough to do. And basically I didn't want to spend a ton of money. Like I actually did go out and buy a juicer, which I ended up returning because I didn't need a juicer to make my celery juice. Just throw it in the Vitamix, blend, nut milk bag, boom, boom, juice. But basically, when running an experiment, I try not to go out and do something drastic like buy a really expensive piece of equipment or, invest hundreds of dollars into something that I'm not sure I'm going to stick with. So that's a word of advice. If you are setting up a protocol, if you are going to spend that money, make sure there's a return policy. I've used it quite often. Don't ask about the dehydrator. I will have to talk about the dehydrators. If my mom is listening, mom, dehydrators, yes. So I have returned a lot of equipment over time, just to make that long story short. But basically, when it comes to diet, when you're running experiments, try to pick something really simple. So whether you're adding something or taking something away, make it very, very small. Make it very, very simple and try it for a week. See how you feel. Sometimes you can't tell the results after a week, but a lot of times you can tell if you're going to keep the habit or if it's annoying or just too much work and you actually want to keep doing this. And sometimes there are health benefits to things that we just don't like doing. For example, I mentioned sardines. Sardines are a great food to eat, but I just dreaded it. Every single time I was like opening that can of sardines, my partner Jason would just look at me and be like, really? You're going for it? Really? Are you enjoying that? No, not really, but I'm going to eat it because it's healthy. So some things are not worth it. So you have to be realistic about this too. What do you actually enjoy? And I think sometimes we sacrifice what we enjoy because somebody tells us it's healthy or we think it's healthy or for whatever reason, we continue doing this thing even though we don't enjoy it. So I do think that's an important thing. But diets, experiment, 7 days, try something. Either you're adding it, you're taking it away, and you're seeing how you feel. At the end of those 7 days, you can decide whether it's worth it, that you want to continue or not continue, and hopefully you don't shell out a bunch of money on it if you can help it. Exercise. Let's talk about exercise. So exercise experiments. I love exercise, but I realize not everybody is like me. Not everybody loves exercise like I do. But there are certain exercises that I really despise. So I'm going to talk about it because this is a big topic of conversation today. Swimming. I just saying that, I just like, I get, I feel this sense of discomfort. I feel not confident. Give me just about any other type of exercise, unless it's like rock climbing or something that has to do with heights or snow. Heights and snow, I do not do. But anything else, I feel like I'm pretty good when it comes to exercise. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll give it a try. But swimming is one of those things that to be a good surfer, you actually need to be a good swimmer. And I realized that is one of the biggest things holding me back from surfing. So when it comes to exercise, I realized this summer I'm going to work on swimming. So I'm running an experiment. And basically, the experiment is I literally just sat down with my partner, Jason, and he wants to get better at swimming too. So we talked about it. I'm like, you know what? I need your help here. Let's run an experiment. There's this app called Swim Smooth. Let's download it. There's a very simple program in there for people that are the worst swimmers ever, which would be me. And we are going to do this thing. And so he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'll hold you accountable and let's run this experiment. All we need to do, Mindy, and it was really helpful because he helps me when I'm really trying to work through issues. And sometimes I want to like run an experiment, but I'm not sure if it's the right time. And so getting his feedback is incredibly valuable. For those of you who have a partner or a friend like that, talk to them about these experiments. It can be getting that feedback is incredibly beneficial. Anyways, so we sat down and we figured out, okay, we're going to run an experiment. We're going to get just enough. I think we have just enough swim stuff. Like I have a swim cap. I have a swimming suit that is actually good for swimming in the ocean. And I have the basics. And I have this app. And now I am going to run an experiment and just do one workout. Literally. Just one workout. Tomorrow, as of the time I'm recording this, tomorrow I am going to go to the beach with Jason, and we are both going to sit there and we are going to do, I guess not sit there, we're going to get in the water and we're going to do that swimming workout. And then we're going to see how we feel. And then we're going to take it from there. But basically, it's a very, very small experiment. I think for me, it's really getting in the water without a board, without some type of flotation device, and figuring out how do I interact with the water. Because this is a very important part of evolving as a surfer, evolving as a water woman, and really getting out of my comfort zone. So it's that simple. So if there's an exercise that you know you need to do, if you know that you are like there's some certain areas, maybe you want to work on your cardiovascular fitness, maybe it's going to that spin class, getting a Peloton bike, maybe it's CrossFit, maybe it is just going to the gym or weight training or doing something in your living room or yoga or flexibility, whatever that is for you. One experiment and just do it one time. Like I would recommend just do it once, see how it feels, then go back to the drawing board and see if there are changes that you need to make. But I feel like with exercise, a lot of us, especially around certain times of year, I think of like everyone's getting ready for summer. There's also the New Year's resolution rush when everyone decides they're going to, exercise 5 times a week for 60 to 90 minutes and they're going to lose all this weight and be jacked. I say take it down a notch. Just one workout, one thing that you're going to do, even if it's as simple as I am going to buy a new pair of shoes. So I will actually put them on and think about running or just see them staring at me. So I am reminded I need to run. I mean, all of us are so different, but taking one step towards that exercise that you know you should do, that you want to incorporate, or that you feel is important to your health or wellness. Now let's talk about finances. So finances, I don't really talk about that so much, at least not yet on the podcast, but finances and I think experiments here are really important. When it comes to managing our money, a lot of us have very complicated relationships with money. I do. I came from a background where I felt that every single penny I made had to be given to somebody else, and that any money that I kept for myself, I shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't be keeping. It needs to go back into the world. It needs to be doing good for someone else. I do not deserve to hold on to money. So for me, there's been a lot of undoing of that very poor money financial background where it all had to be given away. Like nothing is left for you. When you die, you should die penniless, and all of it should go to someone else. And so that has changed over time, of course, as I've been doing a lot of work, I think, on that, just kind of undoing all of that brainwashing from my childhood. And it is really coming back to the fact that I really want to be creating a legacy. So financial baby steps could be something as simple as I am going to save $5 this week and put it in a separate account. Literally, just $5. Like I did start with something incredibly small because it was this mental mindset that I had. I like, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Mindy, set $5 aside for yourself. Put them in a separate account. And now that amount has increased like 10,000 fold, right, per year, if not more. That is actually going towards things that matter to me, towards a legacy for my kids. I think I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, but I invest in the way that I invest. It's IBC, so it's Infinite Banking Concept, if you're curious, and it is a very stress-free way for me to invest and put aside a certain amount of money every single year. Every year, I know that I'm contributing a certain amount to my policy, and that is my target goal for the year. So as long as I hit that number in some way, shape, or form, I'm good to go. And so that has been a really simple habit that was very difficult, though. It took me years, I will tell you, years to get to that point where I felt comfortable investing in that way. I had to do my due diligence. I had to start with something simple like $5 in a separate account. Literally $5 separate checking account. So figure out what that could be for you. Like, what financial experiment do you want to run? Maybe the financial experiment is actually having fun with your money instead of just stockpiling it. Maybe it's like, I'm going to treat myself once a week to something that I really enjoy. So it doesn't have to be saving or building towards something. It could be experiential. It could be contributing to your quality of life. So think about what that could be for you. Now let's talk about relationships. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit juicy. If you've listened to some of the podcasts, I know I'm referencing a number of prior episodes, but you may have heard a little bit more about my relationship story in running experiments. People are terrified. I will just say terrified to run experiments with their relationships. That is something I have noticed across the board in people that I speak with, people that I've interacted with online, in person, friends of ours. You mention relationships and changing anything. Like, it could be super, super small. It doesn't have to be like the experiments that we ran, but something so small and people freak out. Like, it's crazy to me. And I feel like with relationships, first of all, you have to make sure you are in a healthy relationship, because you cannot run good experiments if your relationship is not healthy. So before you start saying, well, Mindy said I should just start running relationship experiments, let's do something wild and crazy. Like, don't do that. I'm saying be level-headed about this, but you can start running experiments with a healthy relationship. So first, you want your relationship to be healthy. Make sure it feels good to both of you. If you are not in that place, or if there are more than two of you, if you are not in that place, get to that spot first. But with relationships, you can run some incredible experiments. One of the experiments that we ran that was like super, super helpful was really playing with the intimacy timing and figuring out like how often, how frequent. Both of us came from a background where we felt like you have to be intimate all the time, and if you're not, your relationship is on the rocks. You're not doing something right. And for both of us, that was incredibly stressful, but none of us admitted it. That's the funny part. It's like neither of us wanted to admit it. We're like, oh yeah, we're sticking to the schedule. We're like rock stars. And when we finally got comfortable, I think enough with each other where we could talk about this, we both looked at each other and like, do we need this level of frequency? Like, what if we went for like quality over quantity? Or even doesn't even have to be quality. Like, maybe we want to do other things besides just have intimacy going on, right? And when we actually had that conversation, it opened the door for us to become better friends, to open up in other ways and connect on other levels where so many couples do not connect. And for us, it was very, very freeing to say, F that. It's like we can actually have whatever level we want. If we want to have less, we can have less. If we want to have more, that's great. Whatever we want to do, we can play with that. And it was an experiment that we ran. And because of that, we are now closer friends. And I feel like our relationship is much better. And we do not feel that we have these weird misconceptions around what a healthy relationship looks like. So that may be different for you. Maybe you want to develop more of your friendship. Maybe you want to spend more time with each other. Maybe there are certain aspects where you want to explore a hobby together. There are so many really cool things outside of the bedroom that you can do in your relationship or inside the bedroom. Like, you can have a heck ton of fun if you want to be creative, but you do have to have that healthy relationship to start and then nurture that and figure out, hey, what's one small experiment that we can try? Now let's talk about family. Family. So if you have kids, if you are part of a family, it may just be you. You may have other people, extended family that you're a part of as well. But running experiments with your family can be really interesting, and sometimes it is a little more challenging because you do not have absolute control over other humans, especially little developing humans. We have two kiddos, 6 and 8 right now, and so they are becoming their own little independent selves, I would say. So for us, it's always this balance of figuring out how much direction from mommy and daddy do we need and how much autonomy we need. So it really is interesting, I feel like, to run experiments. And I learned something from Jason, my partner, and he was a parent before I was. So it was really helpful. He's like, Mindy, you know what? He said, when it comes to parenting, he said, so many people try to strive for perfection. There's all these parenting books and get your kids to sleep at night, get your kids to eat healthy food, all of these tactics to control our children. At least that's how I feel, which I think is so bizarre. He said, Mindy, parenting is actually like bumper bowling. And when you're bumper bowling, there's going to be a bumper. You're going to hit the bumper. You're going to figure out where, when is good, when is not good. And hopefully the ball ends up making it all the way down. But it's bumper bowling. And like you're hitting those guardrails all the way down a lot of times. And so for me, once I approach parenting from that perspective, it's like, okay, basically that means I'm running experiments with the kids. Like, does this work? Does that work? No. For example, like our 8-year-old girl, she is like the most adorable sweetheart. And we actually exposed her to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was shocked. She took to it, and it's been like incredible. She's obsessed with it. She practices 4 times a week. She goes to class. She takes down the boys. Like, she is like a rock star when it comes to this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I had no idea she would have even been interested in. But it was an experiment. It was like we exposed her to it. She had a decision. She could do it or not do it. She chose to do it. And then she knows at any point, like if she wants to do more, we'll support her. If she felt like she wanted to quit, she could quit. And there's no harm done. And I think as parents, sometimes we push our kids. We try to control every single thing, that they lose their autonomy. They lose that drive, and they don't really understand what they like or don't like. So for us, it's all about bumper bowling. That's how we view parenting. And I'll have to bring Jason on to talk about it because he has an interesting perspective that he could just shed some more light on. All right, let's talk about schedule. So for a lot of people that I talk with, they are trying to change their schedule. I talk with a lot of people around lifestyle and business growth and personal growth and schedule. Schedule is one of the things that always comes up, right? Like, but my schedule doesn't work, or this and this. There's always something wrong with the schedule. And I am obsessed with schedules. Yes, I'm obsessed with schedules, confessing here to all of you. Schedules are one of the things that I like to study. I'm always changing my schedule. I always want to optimize. I want to change this or that. But schedules can be really, really tricky because sometimes we'll find something that works and then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. And then we feel like we're back to square one. So figuring out schedules is something that is always, always shifting. So when it comes to playing with your schedule, it's better not to completely overhaul your schedule unless you absolutely need to. It's better to play with 1 or 2 things inside of your schedule that you're going to add or subtract. Because if you do too much more than that, it can be overwhelming. And then you're not exactly sure what is working. So when you only change 1 to 2 factors, it's easy to figure out, this is working well, this is not working well, I should change this back. I'm not quite sure. But if you try to change everything, then you're not going to have any idea what worked, what didn't work. So when it comes to schedules, 1 to 2 things, keep it super simple, ideally very small. So for example, right now I am trying to write. I am working on a book and, I should say another book. I have a number of them that are just probably never going to see the light of day. But I'm working on my next book that I intend to publish. And so as I'm figuring out my writing, it is so tricky. So I thought I had like the perfect schedule. You probably heard me talk about my dolphinness and my sleep schedule if you listened to a prior episode. And I had this amazing time where I was writing at night. I had like an hour of time where I could just write. It felt good. It flowed. I felt creative. Work was done. And that time was mine. And over the past couple of weeks, I've noticed a shift. I'm doing much more writing inside of my day job and inside my client work. I'm writing a lot of LinkedIn profiles. I'm doing a lot of resumes. I'm doing a lot of like marketing thinking and work. And so by the time evening rolls around, I realize I'm just dead tired. There's nothing creative left in me at that point. So it's back to the drawing board. It's like, okay, so I got to figure out the schedule. I got to figure out this writing thing. So let's do a test. So as of this recording, tomorrow morning, I'm going to actually get up earlier and just see how that goes. Like just in 30 minutes, an hour earlier, and just see how that feels. And yes, that's going to mess with my sleep, and I'll have to go to bed a little bit earlier, but I tend to get tired early these days with all the exercise I'm doing, so it should work out just fine. But that is how I'm going to play with my writing and schedule and just see how the two can work better together. And it is really, really important that we don't treat ourselves as a failure when we fall off the wagon when it comes to schedules or something we really feel passionate about doing, whether it's working on your business, whether it's starting a business or changing careers. A lot of us are in transition right now when it comes to professional work and our schedules. So we don't want to get down on ourselves. It's really about figuring out, okay, what is one thing I can change? Let me just move this one thing around and see how I feel. Is this working for me? We can always change it back. That's the beauty of schedules. You can always change them back. You can play with them. You can even move to a different time zone if you need a better schedule. I mean, there are so many options when it comes to scheduling and figuring out what works for us. All right, let's talk a little bit about spiritual life. I don't really get into spiritual life as much as I could because it is something that is still ever evolving for me. But when it comes to spirituality and what that looks like, I feel like all of us are so unique. And some of us really enjoy going and, having Sunday worship. A lot of people like going to mass. There are others who really want to be in nature. Some people are into meditation. There are so many different practices that we have that actually help us to express our spirituality. And it's figuring out what is something that we can do to take one step towards that. No matter whether we're an atheist, agnostic, maybe we believe that there's a God, maybe we don't. Maybe we're very specific about our religious beliefs and preferences. Maybe we're not, and we're still discovering that. But it's figuring out where can we explore here without going completely off the deep end. I come from a background where it was all or nothing. Like you were all into Jesus and the Independent Fundamental Baptist cult group, or you weren't and you were going to hell. So there was no middle grounds there. So it took me a long time to actually feel comfortable with exploring spirituality from a little bit more of an open-minded perspective. I had to go all the way to the other end of being atheist and then kind of move my way back slowly but surely to a way where I feel connected spiritually when I'm in nature, when I'm surrounded by the ocean, when I'm outside, when I'm getting sunshine, when I'm looking at my mango tree. These are all very spiritually grounding practices for me. For a lot of people, it's meditation. Some people, it's singing. There are so many really neat ways that we can experiment with our spirituality that aren't drastic. Like you don't have to give up everything and go, get converted and serve Jesus for the rest of your life and be a pastor. I mean, some people may do that, and that's great. But others of us, it's more baby steps. Maybe it's something very small, like I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes today, or I'm going to take 5 minutes out of my day just to sit and be present with my thoughts, or I'm going to journal. Like journaling can be very, very spiritual too. So it's figuring out what that looks like for you and then designing a practice or an experiment and seeing if it works. I have tried meditation so many times, so many times. I've fallen off the bandwagon, and it just is not the practice for me right now. And at some point, it probably will be. I will do it periodically, but it's not something that I feel like is a standing practice. I feel like for me, when I meditate, the best way for me to do that is to actually be in the ocean, sitting on a surfboard and watching waves. Like there's nothing that makes me more present and makes me feel more alive and in tune and calm as sitting in the ocean watching for waves. And so that is my meditation practice right now. I guess if I had to say I had one. And at some point, I may do some other meditative practices. So figure out what that is for you. It doesn't have to look like what someone else may call spiritual. It can be your own version of what spiritual looks like. All right, and now let's talk about environment. So environment, one more for today. So environment, when it comes to our environment, I got asked this the other day because I was talking about moving to Hawaii and how amazing it has been for us. And I got a little bit challenged because she responded to me. She said, yeah, that's great. But she's like, most of us don't want to move to Hawaii. We don't want to completely upend our lives. But what we do want is we want to kind of feel that vibe that you have, around living on an island, that you have that freedom. But can we have that anywhere, Mindy? Can you please tell me that it is possible to have that same feeling? I don't have to move to Hawaii to get it. And it really got me thinking, and I've had a number of conversations with people, with my partner Jason, just around environment and how we can work with our environment, how we can make our environment better, even if we do decide that moving is not really something that we want to do. And environment is so, so important. A lot of us underestimate the power of our environment. And so in doing that, we tend to miss out on those really epic days because our environment is just not in alignment with where we see ourselves, where we are right now. And so there are some things that we need to experiment with inside of our environment. And even if you don't want to move, there are certain things that you can do environmental wise, like what is your setting like in your home? Like, are there some simple things that you can change? Is it a piece of equipment? Like for us, getting a sauna was so, so helpful in just getting that feeling. Like I had a sauna back in Indiana when we lived there, and being able to sit there in the middle of a really cold winter day helped me feel like I would visualize myself in the tropics. And for me, I know it sounds corny, but that's what I did. And it really helped me embrace my environment a little bit more and be happier where I was. So it is thinking through what are some simple things you can do to your environment to make it more inviting, to make it feel more in alignment. It could be something as simple as buying brand new sheets for your bed because you deserve them and you want to sleep better at night. It could be getting an eye mask. I recently got a weighted blanket actually, which is incredible for sleeping. It does feel like you're getting hugged all night long. It was kind of weird at first, but now I love it. And that was something so simple that I changed in my environment. And now I actually look forward to getting under my weighted blanket at night. So think about some simple things that you can play with that would actually make your environment better. All right, so we talked about a lot of experiments today. But basically, to change your lifestyle, you have to start with running one experiment in the category you want to change. And remember, it's not about drastic change, but about figuring out one variable that could improve the flow of your day. A perfect day starts with one experiment, and all of these experiments kind of start stacking on each other. And so over time, you're going to say, whoa, that is so freaking rad. My entire day is like filled with all of these things that I love. My diet's in order, my exercise I like, finances I feel good about, my relationship is exciting, I'm working with my family, my schedule feels in alignment. So all of these things start working together, but it starts with one experiment at a time. And I like to run an experiment a week, or at least like an experiment a month. So it depends. Like some categories you feel like you need more than a week to be able to tell if something is going to work, but it keeps life so exciting when you're always running experiments and playing with things. It's all about enjoying our days and improving our lifestyle one experiment at a time rather than trying to overhaul everything at once. Drastic change is so much harder to maintain, but tiny habits, or James Clear, his book Atomic Habits, it's so much more manageable. So I highly recommend you check out his book. If you haven't read it, it's a fantastic book. All right, is there a lifestyle experiment that you have in mind to run next? What is it? What is it? Write it down. How will you know if it's a success? If you want to keep doing it too. So write that down. What challenges do you think will arise? Sometimes in planning out our experiments, we forget the downsides or what we have to give up to run that experiment. So think about that as well. Then DM me on Instagram to share your take on running lifestyle experiments, or tell me what one you're going to run next because I'm so curious to know. Let's encourage and inspire each other. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. I'd be absolutely thrilled if you could write a 5-star review for the show if you love it. We're a new show, so any reviews and subscribes we get will definitely help us as we grow. All right, I will talk with you soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye for now.